Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for watching. We're flying to Kansas City on an IFR departure out of Rogers, Arkansas. That is Romeo Oscar Golf. That's the home airport for 507 Romeo Whiskey, the Doctor Pilot. Appreciate you watching today. This flight takes place on a Thursday. We got an IFR departure. Going to go up through a thin layer of clouds, and then we're going to be going down through a double layer of clouds into Kansas City. Makes for a pretty exciting IFR departure. Here you can see we're rolling out. One of the interesting things about the Cirrus SR22 Turbo is that you can definitely over manifold pressure on takeoff. In other words, if you go full throttle, you can get up into the 37 range as far as manifold pressure, which is a little high. 36.5 seems to be the appropriate amount. I can remember this happened to me taking off out of Kansas City one night, heading back home here to Rogers at night, and I got a fuel flow pressure warning immediately on, well, basically when we rotated. And so what I learned is that when you go full throttle for the takeoff, eventually at some point during the runway you have to kind of bring the throttle back to around 36.5, so it's not necessarily in the yellow, but just below the yellow instead of being in the red. Very, very dangerous if you do it that way. So here you can see we've taken off. We're going to have to get a right turn here in a minute. We had to go on a 183 heading. It's the Rogers 4 departure out of Rogers, Arkansas. That departure puts us on a 183 heading until they switch us over to Razorback approach, which is 126.6. Once they switch us off, he gave me a west or right-hand turn to a 270 westerly heading. And the reason for that is we've got a regional airport over there to the west, about 8 miles. And I think he wanted us to climb at a certain speed and go at a certain direction to kind of keep us out of the takeoff and landing corridors of XNA Regional Airport. But that's fine. Before too long, he gives us a turn direct to Johnson County Executive Airport, or OJC, Oscar Juliet Charlie. You can see that cloud layer above us there. It's fairly thin, only a couple hundred feet thick, but needless to say, it was a 32-degree day, so we are going to use some anti-icing fluid to get up through that. Primarily, we need to use that system about once a month just to make sure that we keep everything flowing. Those TKS fluid systems, from what I've been told, will dry out. And if you let them dry out, you're in big trouble. So it's a good idea to exercise them at least once a month according to the POH. But we use it here just to help us get up through this layer. And it's a good thing we did, because we got some icing once they gave us a turn. We could see icing on the windscreen. So here comes that turn, and we're going to turn northwest here, and you're going to see we'll go right into that layer, and we get a chance to see how that TKS system works. Now you can see that layer is fairly thin, like I said, 100 to 200 feet. But at this point, I've got the weeping fluid going over the wings. It's a little hard to see, but you can see it dribbling down the wing there. TKS fluid is a good way to prevent any kind of icing formation. TKS stands for known icing, and so you can, or take off into no icing. So you can absolutely do these things if you're smart about it. Now, would I take off into an icing layer that's 6,000 feet of clouds? No. But a few hundred feet's no big deal for this kind of machine. It can do it quite handily. Nobody wants to hang out in icing conditions in the clouds, especially when it's really thick like that and you're going to be up or down through those clouds for long periods of time. Now, I have been told that at the tops of the clouds is where you get the most icing. I don't know how true that is or not, but they say that the most icing occurs at the very tops of the clouds. Not quite sure why that is. Maybe someone can explain that to us. But needless to say, that's what I've been told. Now you can see we're starting to pop out a little bit already. You know, this bird climbs at 1,200 feet plus a minute, and it can really get above those clouds pretty quickly. And you can see some moisture on the camera too, so we knew there was moisture in those clouds, but it wasn't very thick, so it was nice and safe to be able to do that. Now we're starting our descent into Kansas City. We got to go through that double layer of clouds. You can see there's a little bit of icing formation starting to start there on the windscreen. Some of that's fluid coming off the anti-icing on the propeller as well. The propeller has not a heated prop, but it's got TKS fluid slingers. Basically little nozzles that stick out on the propellers, and they spray that fluid all over the place. But we did get a little bit of icing forming on the windscreen. Nothing major, but enough to kind of get your attention. As we descend down, you can see the moisture coming off the camera. So it was moist, and it was containing some icing, some liquid water drops. And thanks to that fluid, none of it stuck at all, which was great. It was fantastic. And boy, it's a different world down underneath those cloud layers. But we're going to fly down here into a below layer. And basically we had a little thin scattered layer under this top overcast layer. And you can start to see it coming through right now. That layer was pretty thin. And it was about, I don't know, 1,200 feet above the ground. Not that high, but nonetheless, you know, we still flew an IFR approach. What we ended up doing was asking for an RNAV approach into Johnson County Exec. We were coming from the south, but we were having to land to the south. So we filed for an RNAV 18 into Johnson County Exec. And then ultimately the controller asked, do you want a vector just to get under these and go direct? I said yes, so we took it. And I certainly appreciate that. It makes things go a lot faster because approaches can sometimes take quite a while to do. You're up in the air another 25 minutes or more just flying the full approach. So a lot of times in situations like this, if they offer you an opportunity to fly a partial approach, I would take it. It helps them. It helps the other pilots that are taking off and landing at the airport you're going into. And it just kind of speeds the process up a little bit. Now there's a Class Bravo up above Kansas City. As I look here on my phone, I can see that Class Bravo up there. We want to stay out of that, obviously. Johnson County Exec is just below it. So it's not quite into the Bravo, but if you go too far north on this RNAV approach, you'll end up flying right into that Bravo if you're not careful. So being on IFR approach, you're following all the instructions that you're given by ATC, so there's no risk of that occurring, which is nice. So here you can see we're still descending at a pretty good clip, 500-600 feet a minute, trying to get down, and he flies us up a little bit past the runway corridor. Then he gives me I want to say a 320 heading. Kind of does a U shape. I figured he would just go straight west 270, but we go 320, 300, 280, 260, and then eventually he flew us through the landing corridor for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. I think it had something to do with an aircraft that was about to land on 18, and it must have been a slow Cessna, maybe a 152 or a 172, something really, really slow. And because of that, he flew us past the corridor and then back onto the approach course. So here you can see we're kind of going through this scattered layer. This is the final layer. We're not using any TKS fluid here. There's no reason to, because you're going right through it pretty quickly. And it's probably not containing much moisture, if any at all. But once you activate that TKS system, it's kind of crazy. It'll continue to leak for quite a while. So it can be a big giant mess back in your hangar if you're not careful. So I put down these absorption mats under the wings, and it seems to have really worked. It seems to have really kept it from getting onto the concrete floor and making things an absolute disaster. So once again, we're flying on a westerly heading now. I want to say it was about 280 at this point. And he's flown us a little bit past the approach corridor. You can see that highway underneath. That kind of runs north and south, with the south direction, of course, where we're heading at this time. But he's flying us past that corridor. I think, again, probably there was a very slow plane landing in front of me, and we were doing, I don't know, at this point probably 140 indicated, still 145 indicated. So we were still moving at a pretty good clip at about 63% power. You can see that on the panel. Now we get finally a little bit of a turn here back towards the airport we're heading, but not a complete turn yet. And this is what surprised me. I figured he would turn us direct, because right now we're passing over that approach corridor. And I think he was kind of sort of S-turning me, essentially, to prevent me from running into the landing procedures of the aircraft in front of me, because they were very, very slow, and we were still moving pretty fast. A little Cessna 162 lands at about 65 knots, and we're doing 145 knots right here. So that kind of thing's not good if you're not careful with your approaches and your landings. But being on an IFR flight plan, it is what it is. You do what they tell you, and you learn that as you go. So here we finally get a little bit of alignment to cross back up with where we're going. And we can see the airport up in front of us there. So it eventually worked out. Yeah, we flew across the approach corridor, had to turn back around, come back from the west to the east to get back in line, and now we're on the approach right now for a straight in 1.8. Now, of course, this is a visual approach at this point, no longer IFR, but I'm still flying the RNAV approach. We use the activate vector to final, allow the aircraft autopilot system to fly the RNAV approach in, just to make sure it continues to do it, and of course to take some stress and energy away from me as the pilot. So it works out pretty good. And we're approaching here, and of course we'll get a little closer as we go. You can see Kansas City has a lot of golf courses, especially down here by Johnson County Exec. It's rather unusual. I've seen golf courses before, but boy, they have a bunch of them, and it's interesting. I'd like to play some of them sometime. That would be fun. So the approach controllers released us VFR at this point to Johnson County Exec Tower. Now they only have one runway. It's a 1836 runway. It's a nice airport. A lot of airplanes flying in and out of there. I think it's a base for Pilatus, because they have a lot of Pilatus aircraft here, which is amazing. But because of that, this airport can get a little busy. But it's only one airport. It's only one runway, excuse me. And boy, it can be busy getting in and out of there, especially when it's a really nice day. Now today was kind of a cruddy day, so it wasn't very pretty going in and out of there, but we did it anyway. We were trying to get to Kansas City, and we were looking for lighting, believe it or not, going to lighting stores. My wife's, we're building a house, and her and the designer are figuring out what lighting to go with your kitchen, with your dining room, with your living room, with your entryway, how to match that with your furniture, the knob handles on your cabinets, the knob handles on your stove. It's unbelievably complex, and I applaud them for being able to do that, because I certainly would not have the patience to do that. So you can see there's a lot of housing around this airport. It's an executive airport. It's south of Kansas City. This is kind of the newer part of Kansas City, but it's a beautiful area. We lived in Kansas City back in the late 90s when I was in school for college, and really enjoyed the city. It's a beautiful place to be. And of course, now this year, once again, the Chiefs are 2024 Super Bowl champions. But here we go, going right across the approach path. Interesting seeing cars going underneath you if you're not watching the runway and getting distracted by that. Well, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. If you would, click like and subscribe. Share these videos with your family and friends. Share aviation with others. And let's enjoy aviation together. I'm the Dr. Pilot. Y'all have a great day.